Let's go ahead and do this thing.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, everybody. I still have a cold. You may be able to tell that I still have a cold. I found it annoying listening to last week's podcast, dealing with my cold voice. And I hope you didn't as well. I hope you're made of sterner stuff than I am. And I hope you don't find it too annoying listening to my cold voice this week. Let's hope that my cold is gone by next week when we are going to be recording a third podcast from this month, August 1968.
Yes, indeed. And meanwhile, we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's been going on. Among other things, our dad just came out of elective surgery this morning. He got his second hip replaced, which he did not wait until it was unbearably painful this time. He decided to be a little more proactive about it.
Yes.
So he just got that done this morning and is out of surgery, and everything looks to have gone okay.
Yep, that's great news.
Indeed. Meanwhile, my phone became unresponsive over the weekend, and the Apple Store basically said, yeah, you need a whole new display. And this is an iPhone 11. Apparently, as of the first of the year, it was officially declared, and I quote, vintage, which means it will no longer get like operating system updates or anything like that. So rather than paying $200 to keep that one going, I ended up getting myself a new phone. Due to what was actually in inventory at the AT&T store at the moment, I ended up getting an iPhone 17 Air, which was not my first choice, but it's kind of neat.
Cool.
And it also came with some sort of a deal where I could get an iPad for not that much more money. And I had previously had an iPad 2. So literally the second generation of iPad.
Yeah. iPad 2 died 10 years ago.
Yes. Well, I have not been using mine for quite a while. So most of the reading of these comics that I do, I've been tending to do on my phone, just, going panel by panel. Not ideal. So now I've got a nice new iPad I can do that on. Good stuff, although it's kind of a pain having to log into everything again on your new devices and get everything set up correctly. But that's what I've been doing the last couple of days.
Yeah, that's annoying, but fun and exciting. We all got new phones in our family not that long ago because they were having a deal. They were having a special. Well, we all got new phones except for my daughter, who thought the whole thing sounded like too much of a hassle. And now she deeply regrets it because some people got these new phones and she does not. Well, congratulations / condolences and congratulations / wish for a quick recovery to our dad. But should we go ahead and continue with the books of August 1968?
Well, I mean, that's what the people signed up for here, so I say we give it to them. When talking about which ones we're going to do in what order, all I care about is that I'm not the one to summarize Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
It is a complex pod, isn't it?
That's my one request. I don't care who does what in what order, just as long as you are the one who has to explain that one.
I'm not going to go into great detail about the plot for obvious reasons, because it would take all week. And because I couldn't quite follow it. But
yes.
But I loved it. I absolutely love the story. Well, we keep talking about it. Should we go ahead and start with that?
Oh, yeah. Do something a little different here. Why not? I think we usually start with Fantastic Four when we're doing that in a bunch. But yeah, let's go ahead and do Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Mix things up a little bit. I've got to pull that one up on my new iPad here. Ooh.
Yes.
And there we are. All right. I've got it.
All right, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 3. We have an absolutely gorgeous cover. We've got Nick Fury's face in the clouds looking down over a gothic castle and a girl with a white shock in her hair who is wandering the moors in a graveyard, and a hellhound is attacking her as if it is something from The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle.
And there's another ghostly figure in the background menacingly looking at this whole scene.
Yes. We go ahead and jump into the issue. We have first one splash page, which is, again, the Gothic castle in the background lit up by lightning and the face of someone seemingly screaming underneath it. This is all done with nothing but red and white and black. It is very gorgeous. There is a little bit of a poem, Evil Winds of Terror's Stream, as in some cruel unending dream. There's a whole little poem here It says it's an old Scottish legend. It says Nick Fury defies the devil himself as he unravels the lurking fear on the moors of Castle Ravenlock. Stanley, editor, Jim Stranko, writer and illustrator, Dan Atkins, inker, Sam Rosen, letterer. So once again, they're giving Stranko nothing but the best inkers, and he's moving through them one by one. Now he has arrived at Dan Atkins, one of Marvel's best inkers, who I don't believe has inked Stranko yet. Is that true?
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah. Then we get, after that one splash page, we get a double splash page after that, where we see that that person who was screaming is now seemingly been killed in the moors with his, leaving muddy footprints behind. And it says in large letters, Dark Moon Rise, Hellhound Kill. As you see, I guess you see him running away and getting attacked by the Hellhound within the letters. Then you see the shoes of his dead body while the Hellhound is now banging at the moon on the second page of the 2-page spread. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely astounding.
A spectacular 3-page opening to this book.
Yes.
I mean, the difference between what we get here and what we get in most other Marvel comics at this point is just they're on two different worlds.
It's a very indulgent way to begin this book because this book will be packed with plot, and a lot of that plot will have to be dealt with very quickly because we begin with 3 splash pages that don't start the story yet. But it's a trade-off I can go with. Sure enough, then we get to page 4, and there is a ton of story. We find out that Nick Fury has been invited to go to Scotland near Loch Ness to investigate. Well, he was invited to come investigate a murder, and then the person who invited him out has been murdered. That was the person who got killed by the Hellhound at the beginning. So now he wants to solve his friend's death. And he meets the suspects. He meets various people who live in this Gothic castle on the moors. And I'm not going to get into all of them. Well, he says, my name is Mycroft, and my associates Countess Caution, and my young ward Rachel. And then there's various other people here as well.
Who is it that Nick is speaking to by the fire before those other people come up? Because they don't say his name for a little while. I think they eventually reveal his name, but that was one of my real confusions on what was going on here is who is who, and where did these people come from, and what's going on? Do you have an idea who this guy is?
No. He's wearing a robe, so this is presumably his house.
Yeah.
This is
the current Lord Ravenlock or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, they're standing by a fire. Everything is lit very dramatically. Then these 3 new people have arrived. Fury is getting to know them when suddenly a suit of armor this is the sort of castle you're always being looked down on by swords that are hanging from the walls and gargoyles that are looming from parapets above you and giant suits of armor. But wait, one of the suits of armor starts to fall on this beautiful blind girl with a white streak in her hair, sort of an unearthly blind girl who is psychic, and Nick Fury has to save her and does so. They explore the Gothic castle for some time. They hear about the legends of the hellhounds that go ahead and kill people out on the moors. They decide to hold a seance to attempt to, let's say talk to someone. I'm zipping through this plot. A ghost appears in the seance. Nick Fury has to presumably pull a sword from the wall to get in a sword fight with the ghost. The ghost shatters Nick Fury's sword, so then Nick Fury has to now pull 2 daggers from the wall to continue his sword fight. And then Nick Fury eventually goes out a window down onto the 2nd floor on the moors when he sees the beautiful psychic girl wandering the moors. And we have another double-page splash, once again with the moors, once again with the Gothic castle in the background, and once again with the Hellhound leaping at someone. So this is getting a little repetitive. Mm-hmm. And once again, as we've talked about, this double-page splash happens on pages 12 and 13, which tends to be where the law seems to have been passed down at Marvel at this point, that if we're going to have a double-page splash, it's ideal to have it on pages 12 and 13 because that's where the staple is. So
and
then,
the way that he was able to get away with having a double-page splash on pages 2 and 3 is that it was a very minimalist drawing, and there was no actual art right at the staples.
Yes.
So it was like the art was mainly in the lower left corner and the left edge of the left page and the right edge of the right page.
So Nick Fury pulls out his gun, is fighting with the Hellhound, seemingly, I guess, shoots it enough to make it run away. This seems to confirm the rumors. And then they see the Gothic castle in the distance. It's sort of a Gothic tower. Nick Fury goes in with the psychic girl, and the psychic girl is able to detect where the secret passage is psychically. So she really is psychic. And then Nick Fury doesn't take her with. It's inside a Iron Maiden. So that's a little scary. And I guess he decides it's scary enough that it'd be better to leave her alone in the haunted Gothic castle than it would be to take her downstairs with him. Sure enough, she, however, gets attacked while she is up there. Fury has to come rescue her. The Hellhound comes in. Well, what happens? The Hellhound comes in, and then does anybody deal with it? I don't know.
I think the Hellhound comes in and ends up shutting the sarcophagus or the Iron Maiden on whoever this other guy is. Is this Mycroft? And whatever trick or trap allowed the backside to open to let Fury down into the bowels of the tower didn't work. And so therefore this guy just got spiked in the Iron Maiden. Yeah. At least that's my read of it. Which person this is, I was just finding it so hard to keep track of the various characters. So which person this is, I'm not 100% sure of, but I think it might be Mycroft.
But then we get to the classic moment in any mystery tale where Nick Fury pulls all the remaining suspects and potential victims together into one room and explains that he has solved the mystery. And he then tells them about the mystery, and there is a tremendous amount of text on page 18. After doing all of these relatively wordless splash pages, we now have to cram in a lot of text of him explaining the whole mystery, which I couldn't exactly follow, so I will not attempt to explain it to you. Then there's even more text on page 19 where Nick Fury explains that when he went downstairs at the place, he found a Nazi submarine bunker. A Nazi submarine, what would that be called? Not bunker, dock. And there were a bunch of Nazis downstairs. Now, keep in mind, this is a comic being published in 1968, but these are presumably neo-Nazis of some sort, but they've still got U-boats, and they have been using this place since the 40s. And it turns out they're like, oh, and by the way, that's where Loch Ness Monster comes from, it's actually Nazi U-boats that are anchored in Loch Ness and then are somehow finding their way out to the ocean. The whole thing is absolutely nuts. It's absolutely crazy. And Fury deals with everyone. One of the men agrees to adopt the psychic girl because I guess her father was the one that was killed. And
or I think, remember, he said that the girl was his ward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it turns out that she was actually the child of this guy who's now going to be taking care of her or something like that. It says, "I, lass, but you might as well know the truth now. Mycroft lived at Ravenlock years ago. My brother was caretaker then, and he had a baby, but he was sick. His wife hadn't lived through childbirth. He asked Mycroft to care for the child." So this person who's actually going to be taking her now is actually her biological uncle.
Yes. And so that's a happy ending. And then Nick Fury slinks off with the slinky redhead, who was part of the group of suspects, seemingly ignoring the fact that he's got a girl at home. What does Taylor Swift say? "Don't look at me, you got a girl at home," and everybody knows that. Well, everybody knows that, Fury, but you're looking at her. And says, "And so the curse of Castle Ravenlock came to an end, but not before many lives had fallen neath the ancient blood oath. Who was it said that the evil that men do lives after them? Perhaps he was right. After all, we'll let you be the judge." And that is the end of this Gothic mystery horror tale, which is just delightful. It is, yes, I couldn't follow it, and yes, that's a problem, but I never can follow stories like this. So generally speaking, like I couldn't follow Hound of the Baskervilles. I couldn't follow any of these sort of things. I still enjoy them. I still enjoyed this tale quite a bit, even though I couldn't quite parse who all the potential victims and victimizers were. But the art is just gorgeous. The art is just insanely, hellaciously gorgeous in this issue. Stranko's penciling, Adkins inking, and I love Stranko's writing, even though I couldn't follow it. I could follow the basic outlines of it, the basic sketch of it. I thought it was very clever to have, the psychic girl be able to find the secret passage, and to having, a Nazi U-boat dock be the secret of Loch Ness. I just thought it was delightful. What do you think, Stu?
I thought it was visually stunning, and primarily one of the things about Steranko that I have, looking back on him from the 80s and such, I would often look at the actual just sort of figure drawing and faces and stuff like that and be like, I don't see what the big deal about this guy is. It's like, doesn't always hold together. But what really jumps out at you when you're looking at this stuff in real time, the way that we're doing here, is just his layout and design sense is so revolutionary to comics. Well, I say revolutionary to comics. I'm sure that Will Eisner fans are probably going to be like, oh, well, actually, not so revolutionary. But in terms of what he's bringing to the superhero genre, it really is absolutely mind-blowing what he's doing for this particular genre of comics.
It is, even though this issue is an example of the fact that he is jumping genres quite a bit. We've got a number of genres all piled up here, none of which is spy, although there is a tradition of spies jumping in and solving murder mysteries, like the first two Smiley books by Jean Le Carre are these sorts of mysteries where he is like, a spy who is moonlighting as a detective. So there is a sort of tradition of allowing spy novels to jump out and do this sort of story. But yeah, it's just a mind-blowing book. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking that. Like I said, I was having a really... It sounds like you weren't having a much better time following it, but you were able to get through explaining it as best we could.
My secret was I didn't care.
Right. Aha, I should try that next time.
Let me look through my notes real quick here. Yeah, I say that Stranko is moving through Marvel's best thinkers. What would Stranko have done if they'd put Coletta on him? One can only imagine the amount of fisticuffs that would have flown.
Indeed. Oh, I did notice that at one point in the story, there wasn't a good lord choke, but there was a choke good lord that they had in here. So a little EC horror reference there.
Yeah, I say in my notes, this is sort of like asking AI to write a gothic horror / detective story. Everything is in the right place, but it doesn't actually make sense if examined carefully. But that's fine.
Sure.
It looks right until you start counting the number of fingers.
Yes, although Mr. Stranko did not get the number of fingers wrong anywhere along in here.
Yes, no, I'm saying that AI art looks right until you count the number of fingers, and this looks right until you actually try to figure out who all the suspects are.
Yes, absolutely. So which book do you want me to follow up with here? God is dead and all is permitted at this point, now that we've gone and done this out of order this way. So
we always follow up Nick Fury with Doctor Strange. Should we do Doctor Strange next?
Sure. Well, where Fantastic Four will fit in here, who knows? Okay, so Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts, number 171. We have a wordless cover, as you've been pointing out lately. That's something that they don't usually do, but they've been experimenting with here and there. Mm-hmm. We see Doctor Strange doing his little hand motions and kind of lightning bolt stuff shooting out in a radial pattern, while giant hands are reaching out at him from the background, and a whole bunch of shattered stuff seems to be all around him. So a little unclear exactly what's going on. But when we get inside, Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts, in the shadow of ... death. And death is in full Artie Simek mode. Mm-hmm. Stan Lee presents a mystery-laden masterwork by Roy Thomas writer and Tom Palmer artist. Delineative inking by Dan Adkins. Delirious lettering by Artie Simek. So, Tom Palmer. My understanding, and I will probably be proven wrong about this at some point here, is that this is the only Marvel comic he ever penciled. Right?
I don't think this is the only one, but I think that he, like a lot of people, like will happen occasionally, they will bring in someone and try them out as a penciler and go like, you were a good penciler, and indeed I love this issue. I think it's well penciled.
Yeah.
But they're like, we think you'd be even better as an inker. Maybe because their storytelling wasn't quite up to stuff. Maybe because their drafting wasn't quite up to stuff. But they're like, we think you'd work better as an inker. Well, Tom Palmer would indeed find his life's work as an inker, but I think that this issue is fascinating, showing what he could have become as a penciler, because I think it's a really well penciled issue.
Yeah, I was surprised at how well penciled it seems, because, I know that he didn't do much work as a penciler. I was expecting to find this looking a little bit amateurish or slapdash or otherwise, having some negative qualities to it. And I really didn't see that. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
And he's inked by Dan Adkins, who is For when you talk about the top tier of inkers at Marvel Comics, Tom Palmer and Dan Adkins are both right at the top, but they are about as different from each other
Yes.
as you can imagine for two people who are both that talented. So this doesn't look anything like the Tom Palmer that we will get to know as an inker, as a finisher.
No, maybe that's because Adkins is inking. Yeah, Tom Palmer as an inker will be famous as being the best inker for both John Buscema and Gene Colan. Gene Colan, notoriously hard to ink, will be beautifully inked by Tom Palmer, and so will John Buscema, although John Buscema responds well to several inkers more than Colan does. Yeah, you talk about they couldn't be more different in that Adkins is a very solid, rounded inker, sort of inspired by Wally Wood, and Tom Palmer is a very loose flowing, sketchy inker, more in line with what you would expect to fit with Colan and Buscema. So we'll see how this works.
Yeah. So Doctor Strange is seemingly returning to his Sanctum Sanctorum in New York City. I don't remember where he would be coming from. Maybe he's coming directly from the Himalayas at this point. I don't remember exactly. But one thing that's funny is he says to himself, I must take care lest I be seen descending to my Sanctum Sanctorum. For whatever befall, the world must never know the full mystic power of Doctor Strange. So do people not know that Doctor Strange lives in this particular address in Greenwich Village? That seems...
At times, it seems they do.
Yes, it seems a little surprising to me that he's assuming that people don't know. So he gets in and we see that he interacts with Wong. We haven't seen much of Wong over the years. We've just seen him here and there. This seems to be assuming a level of contact with Wong that we haven't seen in a while. But one way or the other, they seem to treat him respectfully, and he does not look like an Asian caricature. But on the other hand, he doesn't look Asian at all, which... is I'm not sure.
Well, that tends to be where artists go these days. Like these days, you have characters who are supposed to be Asian or half Asian, and the artists are just very reluctant to indicate that in the art. And so you have characters like the Ultimate Comics Wasp or Invincible. I think most people who read Invincible, if they don't read certain issues, don't realize that character is supposed to be half Asian.
Oh, really?
I think that most people who read Ultimate Comics Wasp didn't realize that character was supposed to be half Asian. It's just artists are very reluctant to, because there's such a horrible history of overly exaggerating Asian features that people are really reluctant to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not as disrespectful as having a horrible racist caricature, but, it seems disrespectful in some ways to not actually have somebody look like they're being represented correctly for their particular ethnicity or race.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working on some issues of stuff, there were black characters where I would be trying as an inker to, make sure that, hey, if a black kid is picking this issue up and reading this, I want them to see themselves in this character and not just have it look like a white guy who's inked black. So anyway, we'll move on here. So Doctor Strange talks about how when he last talked to the Ancient One, he was talking about trying to find Clea and gave Doctor Strange this particular spell to speak, and he would be assisted in finding Clea. So page 3, we have a big splash page with just one little inset panel in it, where we get to see Tom Palmer doing his best Doctor Strange cosmic mystic background here, and I think he does a pretty good job with it.
Oh yeah.
And he is speaking to a representative of Satanish the Supreme. So he's not Satan, he's just Satan-ish.
Yeah.
One way or the other, he's able to get from this assistant to Satanish a vision of Clea, and it looks like that vision of Clea might be swiped right from a Ditko drawing. But Doctor Strange, for some reason, knows that he must have a female companion with him to go and help find Clea. It's not clear why that is, but that's part of the magic of this. So he goes and finds Victoria Bentley, who last time we saw, I thought they had wiped her memory of all of this stuff. But She is apparently throwing like these swanky soirees in her British castle. Although one person at the party says, your parties are the talk of London. It's like, that does not look like that's in London. That looks like that's out in the countryside somewhere. But she gets a mental summons to come and join Doctor Strange. She's to some extent like, oh, he loves me. But then he's like, yeah, you need to help me find this other girl. And she's like, well, okay, how can I refuse? This girl's in trouble. I need to go ahead and do this. Mm-hmm. So they head off into, once again, more Mystic Dimensions. Page 10, panel 1 has another one of these. And overall, Tom Palmer's doing pretty well with this, although that does look kind of cluttered and busy. It sort of doesn't have the depth that I sometimes like to have out of these things. But that's really nitpicking. I think generally he's doing pretty well. First, Victoria Bentley and then Doctor Strange get sucked into some kind of weird orb that's there. They get separated when they get in there. We have another double-page splash on pages 12 and 13 of more mystic stuff that's inside that orb. He is attacked by a bunch of eyeballs, or not attacked, but a bunch of floating eyes are looking at him here. So he and Victoria Bentley had gotten separated when they got into this orb thing. So they finally find each other again, and she's kind of freaked out by this whole thing. She's frightened. And so he puts her in some kind of a protective bubble, and he's like, I thought she was going to be stronger than that, but I guess I chose this life and she didn't, so whatever. I'm like, dude, she's give her a break. Yeah. We then get some kind of weird mystic knight with a flaming sword coming out of his hand and a big shield that ends up fighting Doctor Strange. They have a duel that lasts for several pages. At the end, he is confronted once again by Dormammu. So I don't think we're in the dark dimension here, or at least we were not told that we were in the dark dimension. It could be that orb sucked them into the dark dimension and we did not know it. But Dormammu appears to be giant, although he lets Doctor Strange know that no, Doctor Strange has actually been shrunk. But we find that Doctor Strange is literally in the clutches of Dormammu at the end, with both Clea and Victoria in little protective bubbles over Dormammu's two shoulders.
Yeah.
Overall, I was pretty impressed with Tom Palmer's both his storytelling and his rendering, and just overall, I was quite happy with this. And I'm a little bit, I wonder if it's just a deadline issue, if he just wasn't fast enough to be a penciler.
Yeah. That's an excellent guess.
Yeah, because he acquits himself quite well in this story. What was your thought?
I love this issue. I really like his art. I think he does a great job living up to Ditko's example in terms of doing the alien dimensions. And, it's great to have everybody come together here. We've got Victoria Bentley and Clea and Dormammu. It's great to have Dormammu back. I say in my notes, Tom Palmer, he's finally here, but he's penciling, but he's good. And Atkins is always a great inker.
Right.
And I like the silent cover a lot. I guess those must be Dormammu's hands that are smashing him on the cover, as we'll find out eventually on the inside.
Yes.
I think this is just a great issue, and it's a great one of these what could have been comics in Marvel history if Tom Palmer had gone a different direction. But I'm certainly glad that he becomes one of their best inkers and will soon move to inking. I don't remember how long it takes him.
Yeah. Like I said, I was much more impressed by this issue than I expected to be. But that being said, as an inker, he's going to really be of immense value to the Marvel universe going forward. And I will happily trade in this very well done penciled issue for the expertly inked and finished issues that we will be getting from him going forward.
Yep. And it's great to have Atkins doing so much inking this month. He did a beautiful job on both of the books we just read.
Indeed. With two very different pencilers.
Yes. Very different.
All right. So what are we doing next? I guess usually...
Should we go ahead and do Fantastic Four?
Let's do it. It's just chaos around here.
Chaos. All right. Let's go ahead and do Fantastic Four number 77, Shall Earth Endure? And we've got the Psycho Man on the cover with radiating machinery. And then in the radials, we have all of the various things that are going on inside the book with Silver Surfer and Reed, Ben, and Johnny. And we've then got Sue and Crystal, who seem to almost be in childbirth here, but not quite. And then we've got Galactus. We go ahead and jump into the book. The fabulous FF must fight to the finish as they desperately ask, shall Earth endure, featuring the mentally induced power of Psycho Man. Another Stan the Manly and Jack King Kirby cosmic creation, embellished by Joe Sinnott, lettered by Sam Rosen. Nil Nisi Optimus. I don't know what that means.
No.
We begin with Reed, Ben, and Johnny are still in the microverse, and then there's some possibly a giant piece of machinery looming over their heads, or possibly a tiny piece of machinery looming very far in the foreground. Hard to tell.
By the way, okay, so nil nisi optimum apparently is a saying that means nothing but the best is good enough. So it seems that he was trying to be all snooty here, but then got the Latin wrong.
Or was turning it into some sort of pun that flies over our heads or something.
Yeah, that's another possibility.
Get it? Not optimum, Optimus. Gaga. So then we begin the issue. As you recall, I hated the end of last issue where they convinced Silver Surfer to seemingly come with them to go confront Galactus and save the Earth. But then in the last minute, they're like, nope, you go save the Earth without us. We're going to stay here to kill the Psycho Man. Earth will never be safe as long as Psycho Man lives, they said. So we're going to stay here and fix that, presumably by killing him. I'm like, okay, that's totally out of character for them. But okay. Then the thing happens that should have happened at the end of last issue. They should have been kidnapped by the Psycho Man and then told Silver Surfer, you go to Earth, save Earth without us. We have to deal with the fact we've been kidnapped by the Psycho Man. I always like it when, I go back and forth on this. Sometimes I say I like it when the heroes take initiative, but sometimes there are stories that really require the villain to be the one taking initiative. And this is a story where the villain should have took the initiative because the heroes had so much better things to do. But all right, so then they are kidnapped by the Psycho Man. They think they attack and kill him, but no, he's just using an encepho projector to make it appear he is there when he is really not. Meanwhile,
on that panel where that happens, Thing is saying, and while we're here wasting time, for all we know, Galactus might be tearing a whole blame planet apart. And Reed says, I've been trying not to think of that. It's like, well, you didn't have... That's a little late for that now. Come on. Go on.
Yes. So then we cut to Silver Surfer, who flies out of the little petri dish that is underneath the giant microscope as he's getting bigger and bigger. He then confronts Crystal and Sue. Crystal and Sue were not at the Baxter Building in previous issues. They were at a different apartment somewhere out in the city, but they've seemingly relocated to the Baxter Building. And Sue is on bed rest at this point. Again, we're not getting a clear picture of her pregnant belly, but it's conceivably there the way the
bedclothes,
not curtains. What do you call the thing that goes on a bed?
Well, I mean, I was just referring to as bedclothes, like, just the whole sheet and blanket situation.
Blanket. That's the word I was looking for. It's entirely possible. She is pregnant based on the way the blanket is sort of draping over her. Silver Surfer is like, well, I'm going to go possibly sacrifice my life, but first I'll help out and zonk Sue. So he zonks her unconscious so that she doesn't have to deal with any of this. And then he flies out to go confront Galactus, which he does. Meanwhile, Reed, Ben, and Johnny are still in Psycho Man's mini-verse, what's it called, microverse. They get in a big fight with him. So this is very unclear and a big cheat here on page 13, where, they go back and forth as to whether or not Galactus has to eat worlds with life on them. If he has a good herald, a fine, upstanding, and moral herald who is trying to keep him from destroying life, then what are your options? Where can you lead him? It's pretty clear he cannot eat Mars. It's pretty clear that you can't just say, all right, Galactus, go eat Mars, go eat Pluto, go eat Jupiter, that they don't have enough life on them. But what does have enough life? What constitutes a ethical way for Galactus to eat? Is it the idea it's just a planet with vegetation on it? It's unclear. Well, here, Silver Surfer finds, hey, here is a planet that has essentially just been destroyed by a flaming meteor. And because the planet is on fire, that's going to be good food for Galactus. So this is an odd way of feeding Galactus something that doesn't kill a lot of people. But he does. We then cut back to Reed, Ben, and Johnny in the microverse. Kirby does not choose to do a double-page splash on pages 12 and 13. Instead, he has a single-page splash on page 14 of them going around in a microverse city, in an abandoned city, but it looks absolutely gorgeous. They finally confront the Psycho Man. They fight him for several pages, and then they finally are ready to defeat him. And then Psycho Man is like, well, what you gonna do? Kill me? And they're like, well, no, we can't, because only you can get us back to the surface at this point, because our ship's been destroyed. And they're like, okay, well, we'll have to declare this a draw, and when next we meet, it shall be as enemies. And then he ships them back to the surface. Meanwhile, Silver Surfer, I'm going a little out of order here. Silver Surfer returns to Galactus. Galactus decides not to take him back on as a herald. And Silver Surfer's like, okay, well, I just did something nice for you, and you don't need me as a herald, so why don't you let me roam the spaceways? And Galactus is like, no, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. I want to know where you are at all times. I'm going to constrict you to the Earth again. Silver Surfer says, yet despite the anguish in my heart, the sorrow in my soul, I did what I believed was right. I could have done no less. There's a caption that says, and you can do no less than to read the Silver Surfer's own adventures in his own mag. Get it today, Salesman Stan. This whole thing has been sort of a backdoor pilot for Silver Surfer having his own book, which is good. But Silver Surfer still, even at the end of this issue, does not reunite with the rest of the Fantastic Four, except for Sue, who he zonks unconscious. This was a very good 4-issue storyline. I really enjoyed it. I think it was an excellent idea. I thought the whole thing was basically ruined by Reed, Ben, and Johnny willfully not coming home with Surfer. I thought that at least they would all be reunited at the end of the issue, but they're not. It's a real bummer, but this is a good issue if you sort of ignore the fact that it doesn't make sense for people to be where they are, and if you sort of ignore the fact that, all the characters don't come together at the conclusion. What did you think of it, Steve?
Mostly I liked it. It was a little bit slippy, what was going on in the microverse, and that what powers does the Psycho Man actually have versus what powers is he convincing them that he has because of his psycho power. So that could be a little bit tricky there, but for the most part, I mean, the art and the action in this book mostly are just fantastic. With Galactus, there's always the question of how often can you go to that well? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, his first appearance was such this is the biggest thing that we have ever faced, and this is literally the end of the world that we're facing off against here. And how can you go back to that without diminishing returns? And yeah, this isn't, I guess this being one of the first returns to this, the diminishment isn't that great yet. So,
yeah.
Overall,
and
I think
they do a good job not overusing Galactus over the years, and having every time he shows up, like, I can't think of any Galactus storylines where it feels like more of the same. It always feels like his arrival always feels shocking and momentous, and I feel like they always got good storylines out of him.
Well, I think they pulled it off pretty well to have him, he's like, oh, well, now I don't have a herald to find myself good worlds. I know that here is this world that I opted not to eat, and I can't find anything else, so I guess I'm going back there. That seems to work for me. Yeah, but lots of cosmic Kirby goodness.
Oh, yeah. Just gorgeous cosmic stuff. I say in my notes, good to get exciting conclusions to both storylines, but decision last issue screws everything up. Psycho Man should have taken them captive, or they should have been there to deal with Galactus. And then I just say, great art, of course, which of course there is. A couple more things in my notes. I say that, so Galactus zonks Silver Surfer back on Earth. Well, I shouldn't say zonks in two different contexts in this. Galactus whammies Silver Surfer to stay on Earth again. It'd be interesting if he hadn't. We're about to get Silver Surfer Volume 1, which is a very good book that involves Silver Surfer always being trapped on Earth. 20 years later, they're going to do Silver Surfer Volume 2, where in that one, in the first issue, he gets free. And then it's this big space opera as he, gallops around the universe, dealing with the Second Kree-Skrull War and all sorts of exciting things going on there. And it would have been interesting if they'd gone ahead and done that here, if they had Silver Surfer get free, and we could have seen a 1960s space opera. But they didn't, and we're going to have 18 angst-ridden issues of him being trapped on Earth, which is good. It's going to be a good book, but it would have been fascinating if they had decided not to go in the less angsty direction.
Yeah, and it would also have been interesting to see what would have happened if they had gone in a more Kirby direction with the new Silver Surfer book, because it will not be drawn by Kirby. It will be drawn by John Buscema, which might be just one more of those straws on the camel's back when it comes to Kirby and his frustrations with working with Stan and working at Marvel.
Yes. Then there's a very funny letter at the end from Tony Isabella. I'm tempted to read the whole thing, but it's a little long, but it just begins, Dear Stan and Jack, I have a question. How could Reed Richards get so confused? It's very simple. Dr. Doom was Daredevil, but now he's back to being Dr. Doom. Daredevil was Dr. Doom, but now he's Daredevil again, who, by the way, is really Mike Murdock, who is really Matt Murdock. The FF are called by Dr. Doom, who at the time is Daredevil, and told that Daredevil, who is really Dr. Doom, is going to attack them. Meanwhile, Thor, who was dead, is now alive, but is unable to become Don Blake. Anyway, it goes on and on and on as he sums up what a inane daffy issue that was
right.
A couple issues ago. But it's a very funny letter. I can snip it and put it on our Blogspot page for this episode.
All right. Okay. So we have done Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Doctor Strange, Fantastic Four. So we still have Submariner and Captain America to cover. Why don't I do Captain America? What do you say?
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So, Slave of the Skull. And on the cover, you've got Captain America surrounded by the exiles who are all attacking him seemingly at once.
Mm-hmm.
On the inside of the issue, take 2 parts Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby, add a dash of Dan Adkins inker, Artie Simek letterer, mix well, read carefully, and serve up another mildly magnificent Marvel masterwork. So I believe this is also the first time we've seen Dan Adkins inking Kirby, is this not?
Yes. Yes, it is. And we just have an embarrassment of riches this month. We've got so much Adkins inking doing these 3 full-length books. And this is also absolutely gorgeous. I just love it. This splash page cannot be more 3D. It just pops off the page. There's just something about the inking just feels like it just is so dynamic here on this splash page and throughout the book.
So we start out in an action sequence with Captain America fighting a bunch of goons, or they seem to be goons. It later turns out at the end of the fight scene that these are LMDs that were once again doing testing to see what jobs LMDs can do, life model decoys can do instead of human agents. And Captain America has proven that a human being in peak physical condition can still take out these life model decoys. Reminds me of a lot of what is going on today with AI and robotics and all sorts of other stuff. Self-driving cars, all those sorts of things. So he's getting out of this gym situation and is undressing. There is a doctor that's going to give him a complete physical, although Sharon Carter comes in and wants to speak with him. But then he's suddenly beset by a massive pain in his head, and that's because of the so-called nuclear tape that has been stuck to the back of his head that allows the Red Skull to zonk him with some sort of button that he's got that's able to cause him immense pain. But he is informed by the Skull through a visis screen of some sort.
They explain that he's, at first I'm like, how would Skull be seeing this? But then they explain by simply monitoring S.H.I.E.L.D.'s own closed-circuit TV channel. And then he says, then I'll set the audio portion of the scanner into operation for instant sound communication. So they're sort of explaining how he would be able to see and talk to Captain America.
All right, so the closed-circuit TV is not so closed-circuit, apparently.
No, very open circuit.
Red Skull explains to him that if this nuclear tape is removed, that acts as a trigger for a nuclear bomb that they've set somewhere in D.C. So he has this thing that causes him great excruciating pain, and if he removes it, he destroys Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So the Red Skull gives him an order to come back to Exile Island or else, basically. And so Captain America decides that he must do it. We see goose-stepping soldiers on the island, and then we get to meet the exiles in a little bit more detail this time. And it's funny, I had assumed the exiles were all old Nazi villains of various sorts, but we do have a cross-section of various cartoonishly evil folks. We've got one who seems to be an Italian fascist. We've got one who seems to be a Russian, presumably communist, even though the communists and the Nazis could not have despised each other more.
Yes.
There's one character who I assumed would have been Japanese, since the Japanese were the allies of the Axis, but instead is clearly Chinese based on, they call him, I think his last name is Ching. Yeah, it's an odd assortment, but I like him.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I like them.
I don't like them, but
No, they're very bad. We condemn them unreservedly here at Marvel Reread Club.
Yes.
But they are fun characters.
Yes, indeed. Captain America heads off to Exile Island. They give the impression.
I gotta say, this is very frustrating to me. In the last issue, they're like, we have Captain America here on Exile Island, but it's fine. Let him escape. Let him go back to civilization because we have nuclear tape on the back of his head, and so we want him to escape the island, and we want him to go back to civilization. Ha ha ha. And then what is their plan? Their plan is to tell him, Captain America, you have nuclear tape on your head, and now you have to come back to Exile Island. And it's like, well, you just had him on Exile Island and you engineered his escape. And now your whole plan, the only thing you're going to do as a threat is just make him come back to where you already had him. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Also, it seems that when Captain America comes back to Exile Island, they make it appear that he had just rode his way in an inflatable raft all the way to wherever this is. Presumably, He was dropped off in this raft by another ship that allowed him to traverse most of the area. But he's picked up by some of Red Skull's goons in the water and taken onto the island. Captain America tries to fight Red Skull right then and there, but then he hits his little button and sends Captain America into paroxysms of pain. S.H.I.E.L.D., meanwhile, finds the nuclear bomb. Somehow it was planted right in the middle of it looks like some kind of military base right behind the big map. The big map, in Doctor Strangelove. But I'll see the big map. That map, basically, is just hidden back there. How it got there, we don't know. But it is been booby-trapped so that if they so much as touch it, it will go off. How they know this, I'm not sure, but fine. We'll go ahead and accept that. Mm-hmm. They called Tony Stark, and they're like, you got to figure out a way to defuse this thing, because otherwise either Captain America is going to die or DC is going to get blown up. Now, why Red Skull doesn't just do both of those because he's a Nazi supervillain, I don't know, but that's the way things go. Mm-hmm. So the Exiles all want a crack at fighting Captain America. The first one seems to be an old decrepit man who's in some sort of a wheelchair, but apparently he is Catavus, monarch of the murder chair. So he's got this deadly weapon chair that he's using to attack Captain America. But then
I'm not sure you should brag about being monarch of your own chair. Like, I don't want to brag, but every chair I've ever sat in, I've been the monarch of that chair. Like, that chair has been under my command the whole time I was sitting in it.
Yes. So one of the more German guys who's here, Gruning, ends up using a whip to fight Captain America, and it's a whip that has some kind of electrical charge to it. So I was reminded very much of Whiplash here. Mm-hmm. Another one of the characters has an iron hand and is trying to smash Captain America with that, but Captain America ends up grabbing the guy by the legs and using him as a blunt weapon against Gruning, who we saw a moment ago. Then the Russian guy shows up, Krushki, and he just is a strong brawler. He just is built like a gorilla and is fighting Captain America, but Captain America is able to outfight him. We then get another guy, the Italian guy, Baldini, who has a scarf that he uses as his weapon, which didn't quite pass the smell test for me. I don't know. How about you?
Oh, no, it's very silly. But, he sort of is knotted up like a towel in after a football game, that he's sort of knotted up his scarf like a towel. It's very silly, but it's fun. So, by the way, this whole idea was that Captain America couldn't fight back because there was a nuclear bomb that would be triggered in DC if Captain America tried to fight back. Captain America just don't care. He's like, at first I was like, don't set off the nuclear bomb in DC, but now I'm like, go ahead and do it. Because it would be nice if Captain America, if they had somehow managed to communicate with Captain America, like, we've defused the bomb, but they haven't.
Yes. So Captain America then takes care of the rest of the exiles, except for General Ching, who is still being held back by the Red Skull. And the Red Skull at this point just decides, oh, okay, I need to go ahead and, use the nuclear tape against Captain America again, but it doesn't seem to work. And so he's like, oh, the only reason why it wouldn't work is if the nuclear bomb had been defused. So they're linked in some way that way, which I find a little frustrating that we don't get to see Tony Stark arrive and start to defuse the bomb. It just sort of happens entirely off screen. We just have to be told about it. But one way or the other, Red Skull and the Exiles are able to make it to a submarine and get off of the island. S.H.I.E.L.D. and including Sharon Carter end up storming the island and wrapping up all of the goose-stepping goons who are left behind. And she removes the nuclear tape off of his neck. And we have a rousing patriotic speech about how we defeated Nazism and all it stood for more than 20 years ago. And here on this site, we did it again. So may we continue to do so over and over again.
Yeah, yes. All done. Never have to worry about that again. Then at the end, we have Captain America heroically waving an American flag, which has precisely 30 stars on it. So presumably it is from that period between May 29th, 1848 and September 9th, 1850, between Wisconsin joining and California joining, according to Wikipedia.
Notice that there are several more stripes to go up above where we are. So there might be 50 stars, but there are 5 columns of 10 stars each.
Yes.
It always does bug me a little bit when the stars on an American flag do not look like they are laid out correctly in something like this, which I know is a real nitpick, but still.
Oh, yeah.
It always bugs me. Overall, just a jam-packed action wall-to-wall issue that is exciting. I feel that I definitely got my 12 cents worth here of combat and action.
Yeah, beautifully penciled by Kirby, gorgeously inked by Adkins, just pops off the page. And yeah, the Exiles are just a tremendous amount of fun. It's absolutely ridiculous that they have Chinese and Russians who, of course, were no fans of the Nazis and were instrumental in helping defeat the Nazis in World War II. But I can't complain. It's silly fun. My biggest complaint about the issue is just that they had Captain America and then their whole plan was to just make Captain America come back after they already let him go. But other than that huge, not even plot hole, but just plot redundancy, this was just a wonderful issue.
Yeah. Oh, and next, Batroc. We will see Zeliper again next issue, which is always fun.
Yeah, it does feel like the story wrapped up rather quickly, that I felt like they could have gotten another issue or so out of him being stuck on Exile Island and having nuclear tape on the back of his head and, confronting the Red Skull, that's what Captain America was born to do. And felt like he could have done a little bit more here, but that's fine. Where does the Red Skull end up at the end of the issue?
He and the Exiles escape in a submarine.
Womp womp. Okay. What a shame. One would hope that you could defeat them once and for all. But okay. So let's go ahead and finish up part 2 of 3 of August 1968 with Prince Namor and the Submariner number 4. We have a gorgeous cover by John Buscema, presumably inked by Frank Giacoia, who does the inside inking. And we've got Atuma and Submariner in a fight to the finish with presumably Atuma's goons cheering them on. Things look bad for our hero. We go to the inside. Prince Namor the Submariner, who strikes for Atlantis? Age cannot wither, nor custom stale this splendor splash saga by Stanley, editor, Roy Thomas, writer, John Buscema, artist, Frank Giacoia, inker, Mac Duffy, letterer. So we've got a new letterer here. And I forget, is that Shakespeare or the Bible? I can never tell with Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas loves quoting them both. Anything Jacobean, he loves to quote. So then, as Submariner is swimming along, he is thinking about Dorma. So I guess his thought of Dorma is sort of dominating the beginning as she seems to rise out of the kelp that he's swimming through, but it's just an illusion. He dives for her and then says, "Naught save a cluster of undersea vegetation. She whom I envisioned was a mere mirage. My eyes did behold what my heart did desire." He can't really decide where to go. He's been trying for several issues to find Reed Richards and has sort of forgotten why or how or where or who or when, but he is still generally going that direction, although now he's thinking that maybe he should go back to Dorma, and indeed he shall. For guess what's going on back in Atlantis? Atuma is back. Atuma and his goons and his jester. We've never seen Atuma with a jester before, but here he has one. Says, "Silence, worm-tongued one, ere I forget your privileged position as court fool." I like the idea of Atuma having a jester. It's just a little silly. And of course, Roy Thomas, as we know, huge fan of The Lord of the Rings, where they had a advisor to a king nicknamed Wormtongue. Atuma addresses his soldiers. I think that Buscema is always great at showing large groups of soldiers or large groups of goons or large groups of mercenaries and giving them all their own personality and their own outfit and their own everything, and yet, a uniformly seething mass of aggression. I think that Buscema and Giacoya are throwing a lot of ink onto Atuma's back here on page 4. That's a lumpy back.
Yeah. When I was trying to learn human anatomy to draw comic books when I was a, kid and a teenager, I was able to basically get a feel for the anatomy of the muscles and bones and stuff in the front of the torso, but the back of the torso always eluded me. And so I'm not sure I could say whether this is anywhere near anatomically correct or not, but I know little enough about it that it seems plausible enough to me. He just has a very big back muscles.
Yes. He is telling all his men that we're going to go ahead and attack Atlantis, although there really isn't an Atlantis right now. The Atlanteans are sort of in transit from their wrecked city. And then one of his men challenges his rule, but he throws a mace into his face and deals with that very quickly. He decides to go ahead and attack the Atlanteans who are still sort of in transit. They do. There is a gorgeous splash page on page 9 of the two armies fighting each other with lasers and axes and maces and bare hands, and they are just tearing into each other.
Yeah, that is a spectacular splash page.
Atuma's goons then go ahead and kidnap everyone from Atlantis, have them all in chains, and then they decide to track down and kill the Submariner as well, who I guess is never going to make it to Reed Richards. They go ahead and put him in chains too and bring him before Atuma. However, he then just flexes his muscle, shatters all the chains that he is being held by, even though they looked very substantial.
Oh, yes.
And he then attacks Atuma. And they, of course, go ahead and fight it out for several pages. At some point in here...
Yeah, page 15, where we're seeing the Atlanteans being turned into slaves to Atuma, there's just in captions, we see yet... gasps Namor, I see not the beauteous Lady Dorma among yon pitiful forms, or Lord Seth, or Vashti the Elder. Dead, laughs Atuma, all dead. So Submariner ends up just taking Atuma's word for this here.
Yes, so I originally read these issues out of order, and I read Captain Marvel first, and at one point in Captain Marvel, Submariner is a guest star in that book, and Submariner is like, oh, ever since Dorma died, and it said, see Submariner issue 4, he's like, I can't bear to live. And I was like, oh my God, Dorma dies in this issue. Well, no, it doesn't. He's just falsely told that she's dead and believes him. Eventually, he goes ahead and fights Atuma hand to hand once again, defeats him, and then he says, now, would any other challenge the Submariner? And they go, no one. He goes, then be gone. And if you ever would assault the Atlanteans, think of the fate of Atuma. But I guess he lets them take Atuma with him. Or I guess is the idea that Atuma is dead. I guess then you see the Jester picking up Atuma's hand, seemingly lifeless hand, and says, you have ever called me fool, my liege. But was it not I who warned you that Gorgol's blindness might not outlast your own? Gorgol was the one who challenged him. Says, and now he is dead, his blindness forever ended, while you endure with nothing but hatred in your heart. So it's very unclear whether he's dead or not, and what is going to happen to his body, whether or not he is. Submariner, now convinced that Dorma is dead, decides to take off again, presumably not to lead his people, who are here desperately in need of leadership, but instead to go find Reed Richards, one would assume. So I thought this was an excellent issue. It's not a good issue in terms of serving the overarching plot. The reason he was searching for Reed Richards is to fight Destiny, who is sort of his ultimate arch villain here. Destiny is never even mentioned in this issue. I guess he is here at the very end. He says, from this day forth, let me think of naught save my search for the villain Destiny. Only thus may Namor live from day to day. So is he still going to Reed Richards for help in fighting Destiny? It's unclear. Everything is very unclear here in terms of the overarching plot. But in terms of a one-off issue, fighting Atuma and at first trying to rescue and then seemingly, he thinks, avenging Dorma, it is a gorgeous issue. Just Buscema knocks it out of the park throughout this entire issue. And Thomas is doing a pretty good job. I love Atuma having a Jester. I like the Jester character. But in terms of the overall storyline, he has very much lost the plot, as they say. Steve, what do you think of this issue?
Overall, I enjoyed it. I think that you summed up both the pros and the cons of the book pretty well. I will say that there was a sort of subplot going on with that Gorgle character where he ends up helping Dorma to actually assist Submariner in his fight with Atuma, even though Submariner was never aware of this help being offered. So she actually in some ways saved him. And this other barbarian who was challenging Atuma, it seems that he actually had some honor to him. And that's why Atuma had to snuff him out. It's interesting that the jester character is apparently named Saru-san, which sounds very Japanese to me. Which is an odd choice.
Yes.
So yeah, overall, a fun issue, and this is coming from someone who's not usually the biggest Submariner fan, but I feel that they really did quite a good job with this one.
Oh, they're just very lucky to have Buscema on this sort of Z-list book, and they're milking him for all he's worth.
Yes.
And you can see why he'll do such a good job on Conan for so many years, because he's great at doing masses of barbarians seething in anger and roiling in battle. If I'm using those words correctly, I'm not sure I am. But this is an absolutely gorgeous book right from the cover. Once again, we have a silent cover, which is interesting. Wordless cover. Yeah, it's odd they only get one issue out of this huge war. This, obviously, today would have been a 6-issue storyline. You know, even at the time, could have been a 2 or 3 or 4 issue storyline, but the whole war gets banged out in one issue. It's nice that people could get so much quality for 12 cents back then, could get so much quantity really for 12 cents, could get such a large story crammed into such a tiny issue. But I wouldn't mind if it had spread out some more. But it's not like we don't have other important plot elements to get back to.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, I think that covers what we're going to cover for this week. Again, because of some travel schedule issues, it's possible that this episode may not post on its usually scheduled time, or if it does, then probably the next one won't. But I just want folks to know not to worry about us if we don't show up for a week.
We're fine, folks.
We're doing okay. We'll be fine. Yeah, I think that's about it from my end of things. Matt, do you have any final words for our listeners before we sign off?
Nope. A lot of great books. This was a fun group of comics to discuss, and I thought it was just generally excellent. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say all 5 of these books were excellent. Nick Fury, Doctor Strange, Fantastic Four, Captain America, and Submariner. Really embarrassment of riches in terms of penciling and inking. 3 of the 5 books this episode were inked by Dan Atkins, and could not be more gorgeous. It's been just wonderful rereading these comics and discussing them with you out there in podcast land.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Please rate and review us if you haven't done so already. That really helps. And then after you do so, enjoy yourselves, and we will talk to you in a week, or possibly 2 weeks.
Okay, bye, everybody.
All right, take care. Stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.